Was I wrong to confront a stranger in a coffee shop after I overheard him confessing to someone, "I have a son," only to realize, with a sickening lurch in my stomach, that he was talking about my son? I mean, what would you have done? Would you have just walked away, pretending you didn't hear it? Or would you have demanded answers from the man who was, until that moment, just another face in the crowd, but who suddenly became the epicenter of a 20-year-old secret that was about to shatter my entire world? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing. It all started, as most ordinary days do, with an ordinary trip to my favorite coffee shop. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Tuesdays were my quiet days. My son, Ethan, was at college, and my husband, Mark, was typically engrossed in his work at the office. I had my usual order, a large latte, extra foam, and settled into my favorite armchair by the window, the one that offered a perfect view of the bustling street outside, but also a comforting sense of anonymity within the cozy cafe. I was just planning to read my book, maybe do some online browsing, just enjoy the peace. Life, for all intents and purposes, was good. Ethan was thriving, Mark and I were happy, and our little family unit felt complete and secure. Or so I thought. I had no idea that my carefully constructed world was about to be obliterated by a few carelessly spoken words from a man I didn't even know. I'd been there for about half an hour, sipping my latte, lost in the pages of a new thriller, when a man walked in and sat at the table directly behind me. The chairs in this coffee shop were rather high, backed, and the tables a little close, so you often ended up being privy to conversations you didn't intend to hear. He wasn't alone. Another man, slightly younger, was already there, fiddling with his phone. From what I could gather, they were meeting for the first time, or at least reconnecting after a long while. Their voices were low at first, a polite murmur of pleasantries, and I paid them no mind. I was engrossed in a particularly tense chapter. But then, the voice of the first man, the newcomer, grew louder, tinged with an unmistakable tremor of emotion. He was talking about something serious, something weighty. I tried to focus on my book, to block them out, but their words started to seep into my consciousness. He was telling a story, a sad one, about regret and lost time. He spoke about a relationship that ended abruptly, about moving away, about choices he made that he now regretted. It was a familiar human story, one of youthful mistakes and the passage of time. I still wasn't actively listening, not really. Then came the sentence that froze the blood in my veins. "I have a son," he said, his voice raspy, thick with unshed tears. "I have a son, and he's 20 years old this year. I've never even met him." My book clattered to the floor, unnoticed. 20 years old. My son, Ethan, was 20 years old. The coincidence, at first, felt like a cruel prank of the universe. It had to be a coincidence, right? There were millions of 20-year-old sons in the world. But then the man continued, his voice dropping to an even lower, more agonizing whisper. "His mother, she never told me. She just left, disappeared. I tried to find her for years, but she was gone. I always wondered if she had the baby. And then, just a few months ago, my sister found her on social media. She's married now, has a good life, and a son, my son." A cold dread seeped into my bones, a sensation so profound it made my scalp prickle. My mind, usually so rational, began to race, piecing together fragments of memories, connecting dots I never knew existed. 20 years ago, Ethan was born 20 years ago, before I met Mark, before my life with Mark. My past, a past I thought I had neatly tucked away and sealed off, was suddenly bursting open. The man's voice, though unfamiliar, was strangely resonant. It had a timbre that tugged at something deep within me, something I hadn't thought about in 2 decades. He went on to describe the woman he had known, the mother of his alleged son. He spoke of her long, dark hair, her artistic streak, her shy smile. He spoke of a fleeting, intense romance, a summer fling, that ended with her sudden disappearance. He didn't use her name, but the description, it was too close to ignore. It was too close to asterisk me asterisk. Every detail, every painful memory he recounted, felt like a shard of glass twisting in my gut. He described the small town where they had met, a place I hadn't thought of in years. He spoke of a specific incident, a summer fair, a shared moment under the stars that only 2 people could have known about. And that was when my world tilted on its axis. He wasn't just talking about a asterisk son. He was talking about my asterisk son. Ethan, my beautiful, kind, intelligent Ethan. The man's companion was offering words of comfort, urging him to try and connect with his son, to find a way to be a part of his life. The sheer audacity of it, the colossal nerve, made my blood boil. He hadn't been there. He hadn't been there for a single doctor's appointment, a single sleepless night, a single scraped knee. He hadn't been there for the first steps, the first words, the first day of school. He hadn't been there for 20 years of birthdays, 20 years of Christmases, 20 years of laughter and tears and triumphs and failures. And now he wanted to waltz into Ethan's life as if nothing had happened, as if he had some inherent right to claim him. I felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it almost made me physically ill. Ethan was my asterisk son, Mark's son. Our son, we had raised him, loved him, nurtured him. This man, this complete stranger, was nothing to him. He was a ghost from a past I had buried so deep I genuinely believed it was gone forever. The secret I had carried for 2 decades, was no longer a secret. It was out, hanging in the air, echoing in the hushed tones of a stranger's confession. My heart was pounding, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. My hands were clammy, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I felt a wave of dizziness, as if the very ground beneath me had shifted. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to deny everything he was saying, but I couldn't, not yet. I needed to hear more. I needed to be absolutely, unequivocally certain. He pulled out his phone, and my breath hitched. "Look," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "this is him. My sister sent me the link to his mother's Facebook. He looks just like me, doesn't he?" I heard the quiet click of a phone unlocking, followed by a soft murmur from his companion. My mind screamed at me to get up, to walk away, to pretend I hadn't heard a thing. But my body wouldn't obey. I was frozen, trapped by a terrible fascination, a morbid need to know. I slowly, meticulously, and with a fear that gripped me to my core, turned my head, just enough to catch a glimpse of the phone screen in his hand. And there he was, Ethan, my son, his bright, familiar smile, his unruly brown hair. It was unmistakably him. And next to his photo, a photo of me, cropped, from an old Facebook profile picture. He hadn't mentioned my name, but my face, my face asterisk, was right there. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was paralyzed by shock, by anger, by a profound sense of betrayal, even though the betrayal was my own, a secret I had kept from everyone, especially Mark, for 20 years. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted him there and then, in the middle of a busy coffee shop? Or would you have waited, tried to gather your thoughts, planned a more private confrontation? What would your first move have been? I'm genuinely curious to hear what you would have done in that impossible moment." My vision blurred. The coffee shop, once a comforting haven, felt like a cage. The sounds around me, the clatter of cups, the murmur of conversations, the soft hiss of the espresso machine faded into a distant hum. All I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own heart and the echo of his words. "I have a son. He's 20 years old, my son." A tidal wave of emotions crashed over me. Fear, anger, resentment, and a terrible, aching sorrow for the truth that was about to unravel my entire existence. How could I have been so foolish to think this secret would stay buried forever? How could I have been so arrogant to believe I could outrun my past indefinitely? I stood up, slowly, deliberately. My legs felt like jelly, but a strange resolve settled over me. I wasn't going to let this man, this ghost, invade my life and Ethan's life without a fight. I wasn't going to let him just casually drop a bomb like this and walk away. The two men at the table behind me looked up, startled, as I approached. The man who had been speaking, I said softly, looked vaguely familiar now that I was standing over him. There was a faint resemblance to Ethan in his eyes, a similar set to his jaw, a sickening confirmation. "Excuse me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though it felt like a stranger's. My gaze was fixed on him, unwavering. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." His eyes widened, and a flush crept up his neck. He knew. He knew I had heard. The other man looked between us, sensing the sudden tension, the dramatic shift in atmosphere. "I think you're talking about my son," I continued, each word a hammer blow. "Ethan, my son, Ethan." The color drained from his face. He stammered, I don't know what you're talking about." A pathetic attempt at denial. "Don't lie to me," I hissed, my voice rising slightly, attracting the attention of a few other patrons. "You just showed his picture on your phone. You described his mother. You described *me*. You said he was 20 years old. You said you never met him. You said you wanted to find him. Well, here I am, his mother." Silence descended upon the table, heavy and suffocating. The other man at the table wisely made his excuses and mumbled something about needing to take a call, quickly disappearing into the crowd, leaving us alone with the wreckage of 20 years of secrets. The man stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock, guilt, and something else, something that looked eerily like hope. "Sarah," he whispered, my name a ghost on his lips. "Is that really you?" "It is," I confirmed, my voice laced with venom. "It's Sarah, and this is my son you're talking about. My son. The son you abandoned 20 years ago." He flinched as if I had struck him. "I didn't abandon him, Sarah. You left. You disappeared. I searched for you. I never knew if you had the baby." His voice was rising now, mirroring mine, a desperate plea for understanding. "You never knew." I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You never knew. You think I just vanished into thin air. I was scared, Adrian. I was young, alone, and pregnant. You were already moving on with your life, making plans without me. What was I supposed to do? Tie you down with a baby you never wanted?" The words tumbled out, years of suppressed pain and resentment finally finding their voice. He was Adrian, the man from my past, the man whose fleeting presence in my life had resulted in the greatest joy and the deepest secret of my life. Adrian slumped in his chair, his shoulders slumping, his face a mask of anguish. "I swear, Sarah, I would have been there. I wanted to be there. I didn't know how to find you. My family moved, you moved. There was no social media back then, no easy way to track people down. And what about when my sister found me on social media, Adrian?" I countered, my voice laced with disbelief. "Why didn't you try to contact me then? Why wait until you're having a confessional coffee with a friend to even acknowledge his existence? He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I was scared. Scared of what you'd say. Scared of what he'd say. Scared of disrupting your life, his life. You think this isn't disrupting my life? I asked, gesturing wildly around the coffee shop, the small, intimate bubble we had created. You think this isn't going to turn my entire world upside down? You think I haven't just had 20 years of carefully constructed reality shatter into a million pieces because you decided to have a pity party in a public place? The anger, the pure, unadulterated fury was overwhelming, but beneath it, a tiny seed of something else was beginning to sprout: curiosity. What did he really want? What was his end game? I want to meet him, Sarah, he said, his voice barely a whisper, broken and raw. I just want to know my son, to apologize for not being there, to explain. My initial instinct was to refuse, to vehemently deny him any access to Ethan. Ethan was mine, he was Mark's. He had a father, a wonderful father who had loved him unconditionally for his entire life. This man had forfeited that right 20 years ago. But then, I looked at his face again, truly looked at it. He looked genuinely devastated, genuinely remorseful, and the thought, unbidden, entered my mind: didn't Ethan deserve to know? Didn't he deserve to know the truth about his biological father, even if that truth was messy and painful? It was a truth I had selfishly kept from him, believing I was protecting him. But was I really protecting him, or was I just protecting myself from the uncomfortable reality of my past? The conversation continued for what felt like an eternity, a raw and brutally honest exchange of 20 years of unspoken words. He recounted his attempts to find me, his gnawing regret. I recounted my fear, my decision to disappear, my fierce determination to build a new life for Ethan, a life free from the shadow of my past. We talked about Mark, about the life we had built, about the love and stability Ethan had always known. By the time we finally parted ways, the coffee shop was almost empty. My latte was cold, my book forgotten. My head was pounding, my heart a raw, bruised mess. We hadn't come to any concrete solutions, any easy answers. But we had opened a door to a past that had been sealed for too long. The drive home was a blur. My mind replayed every word, every nuance of Adrian's voice, every flicker of emotion in his eyes. How was I going to tell Mark? How was I going to tell Ethan? The thought of shattering their world, the world we had so carefully built together, was almost unbearable. That night, I sat Mark down and told him everything. It was the hardest conversation of my life. The look on his face, a mixture of shock, hurt, and bewildered confusion, tore me apart. He had loved Ethan as his own, without question, without hesitation. To discover that Ethan had a biological father he never knew was a gut punch for him. But Mark, being the incredible man he is, listened patiently, his hand gripping mine, his love for me and for Ethan shining through his own pain. He understood that this was not about blame, but about truth. Telling Ethan was even harder. We sat him down, Mark and I, a united front. Ethan at first was bewildered, then angry, then deeply hurt. He felt betrayed, lied to. He couldn't comprehend how such a massive secret could have been kept from him for so long. There were tears, accusations, a raw outpouring of emotion that ripped through our family. He questioned everything, his identity, his past, his relationship with us. It was a dark time, a period of immense pain and uncertainty. But eventually, slowly, painstakingly, the healing began. Ethan, after much deliberation, decided he wanted to meet Adrian. It was a hesitant meeting, filled with awkward silences and tentative questions. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion, not a sudden blossoming of a father-son bond. It was a process, a slow, arduous journey of two strangers trying to reconcile a 20-year-old truth. Adrian, to his credit, was patient. He didn't push. He answered Ethan's questions honestly, expressed his remorse sincerely. He understood that he was not replacing Mark, but merely adding a new, complex layer to Ethan's understanding of his own history. Today, months later, things are still complicated. Ethan has a relationship with Adrian, a cautious, evolving one. They meet for coffee sometimes, talk on the phone. It's not a traditional father-son relationship, and it never will be. Mark remains Ethan's father in every sense that matters, the one who raised him, loved him, guided him. My relationship with Adrian is purely transactional now, revolving around Ethan, a civil, if somewhat strained connection. The secret is out. The truth has irrevocably altered our family dynamic, but we are slowly, painfully, finding our new normal. It was a chance encounter in a coffee shop, a stranger's confession that changed everything. It forced me to confront a past I had buried, to reveal a truth I had kept hidden. It was messy, it was painful, and it nearly broke us. But in the end, it was also a step towards a more honest, albeit complicated, future for my son. If you were on my side, dealing with this incredibly difficult situation, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, where ordinary lives are turned upside down by extraordinary circumstances. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'm eager to hear your perspective. What would you have done differently? I'll see you all in the next story.